Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 111 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. This week's question comes once again from frequent asker and previous guest host during the WandaVision deep dive, Joel L. After finally watching the Crisis on Infinite Earths DC TV crossover, he was curious and asked, quote, did the inhabitants of the various Earths know what number they inhabited? How did they agree on that nomenclature in-universe? I would think they would all want to be called Earth 1. Well, when I went into the research for this question, I was actually surprised by part of the answer, so even if you're a comic book veteran like myself, you may learn something new this episode. As a warning, I'm going to be throwing out terms like pre-crisis, post-crisis, and post-52 with the assumption that you are familiar with these terms. If that is not the case, go back to episode 1 of Welcome to Geektown. I go into some detail on each of those there, and I specifically made that the first episode because I knew it was going to be something that I wanted to be easy to reference back to. Assuming you're all caught up there, let's get on with it. As has been covered in previous episodes, the first time the DC Universe brought in multiple Earths was in Flash number 123, titled appropriately, The Flash of Two Worlds, written by Gardner Fox and drawn by Carmine Infantino. In this story, Barry Allen accidentally vibrates at a speed that matches the vibrational frequency of another Earth, and finds himself suddenly on this strange but familiar world, where he realizes quickly that it is the home of the hero he read about in comics as a kid, Jay Garrick, aka the Golden Age Flash, who inspired Barry to take on the name when he got super speed. Coincidentally, Jay has just come out of retirement as a superhero, and the pair team up to fight a trio of villains on Jay's Earth, after which Barry returns home. Jay shows up again in issue number 137, when Barry notes that the cities a series of strange lights appeared over were each the home of one of the Justice Society, the Golden Age equivalent of the Justice League, and this time purposefully travels to Jay's world to investigate. The pair of Flashes get involved in a fight against Vandal Savage that ends up with the, until now, missing Justice Society being freed from Savage's capture. Up until now, the pair of Earths had not been named, other than by the name of the Flash that held them, i.e. Jay's world versus Barry's world. That finally changed in the pair of stories in Justice League of America number 21 and 22, titled Crisis on Earth 1 and Crisis on Earth 2, one of the earliest multi-issue stories in DC's history. As I've noted before, this was the start of the trend for most big stories in the DC Universe carrying the Crisis name somewhere in their title, one that continues to this day with Dark Crisis starting in June of this year. But getting back to Joel's question, the first time that Earth 1 is named is in the title of the story, with it being named in-universe a few pages in. In this tale, a trio of villains on each of the two Earths team up after the Fiddler, an Earth 2 villain, accidentally finds a way to travel to Earth-1 while in the middle of a heist. The story starts with them already working together, and we learn in flashback how this happened. The villains each perform their parts separately, then meet back up in a special fortress that is somehow between the two worlds. It's in this meeting that Felix Faust refers to his world as Earth-1, and Fiddler then calls his world Earth-2. There's no argument about which world is which, and despite this conversation taking place in private between a few villains, this becomes the naming practice going forward. I find it funny how what eventually becomes a vital part of DC's continuity was thrown out so casually, although Marvel's Earth naming practice was much the same, even more so as it started in a book that wasn't originally published in America. Before I get to that story, though, let me focus back on DC for a little longer. We got Earth-3 and Earth-A named in the next couple of years, and later Earth-X, Earth-C, Earth-S, and Earth-Prime. That last one supposedly being our world. But while DC has many stories that take place on an alternate Earth, originally dubbed Imaginary Stories, later published as Elseworlds, only a few were officially given numbers or letters during the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline in 1985/86, with the rest getting their designation in the back pages of the 2005 Absolute edition of that story, reprinting the tale in a giant hardcover with added material at the end, including that official list of world numbers and letters. A few more of these alternate Earths were given official numbers in the Essential Wonder Woman Encyclopedia, published in 2010. Most of the numbers given in those latter works use the issue number of the book they appeared in, assuming that number is available. For instance, Earth 265 first appeared in Flash number 265. From 1986 until 2008, the DC Universe was supposed to be singular, although there is one story I want to note from that time period, which is Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's hardcover titled JLA Earth 2. In this story, we meet an updated version of the Crime Syndicate. The original iteration of the team was seen pre-Crisis and lived on Earth 3. The Crime Syndicate is an evil version of the Justice League, with characters like Overman, Owlman, Superwoman, Powerang, and Johnny Quick being analogs of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Flash, respectively. Given their opposite nature, Grant wrote that these characters in post-Crisis continuity came from the antimatter universe, and used a special device to instantly change their molecules from antimatter to matter while transferring over to the other world, since matter and antimatter are destroyed on contact with one another in a massive release of energy. It's actually Alexander Luthor, a heroic figure on his world, that first makes the transfer, and he requests the JLA help free his Earth from the tyranny of the Crime Syndicate of America, or CSA. I won't go into all the twists and turns of this story because I highly recommend seeking it out and reading it, but tying this into Joel's original question, it's Alexander Luthor that names the regular DC universe Earth 2, reversing the standard nomenclature of the heroic universe being the lowered number Earth and giving the hardcover its title as well. Again, for a long time, DC only had the one universe, but Infinite Crisis and the weekly miniseries 52 brought back the multiverse. Check out episode 52 of the show for more on that, or go and read it as it's one of DC's best told stories. During Infinite Crisis, Alexander Luthor of Earth 3 created a huge number of Earths in order to find or create what in his mind would be the perfect one. While he was stopped in that story, and those alternate Earths collapsed back into a single one, we find out in the follow-up, 52, that Mr. Mind secretly stashed away 52 of those parallel Earths, each identical to the original Earth, in order to consume them in his quest for power over space and time. While he wasn't able to consume them entirely, his actions did alter each Earth's history to make it completely unique from the others. And through the heroics of Booster Gold and Rip Hunter, those 52 universes lived on, and were officially named Earth 0 through Earth 51. Earth 0 being the regular DC universe that most stories take place in. Some of these Earths were very similar to the pre-Crisis worlds of the same name, like Earth 2 and Earth 3. Some of the more famous worlds that had letter designations pre-Crisis were seen again, but now numbered instead, such as Earth 5 looking much like the pre-Crisis Earth S, and Earth 10 similar to the original Earth X. While a list was provided to readers of many of the 52 universes, not all of them were fleshed out, leaving room for future writers to introduce new alternate Earths. In recent years, DC has expanded their worlds once again, introducing the Dark Multiverse, the Metaverse, and the Omniverse, and there are now so many worlds that it's difficult for any one person to keep track of. Of course, this is what led to the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, so we'll see if Dark Crisis or some other future Crisis simplifies things once again. So, going back to Joel's original question, do the inhabitants of the various Earths know what number they inhabited? Well, in DC stories that feature multiple Earths, like the recent Justice League Incarnate miniseries, the superheroes and other characters who get involved with the multiversal shenanigans either know or quickly learn the number of their home Earth. But outside of that, most people are unaware of the multiverse in general, let alone which of the multiple Earths they reside on. I promised I'd get back to Marvel eventually, and here we are. Marvel did and does contain multiple Earths, although most of them only appear in a single issue of What If or other one-time stories, and they're often referred to as divergent timelines, but it's much the same concept. However, much like DC, Marvel didn't use any official naming convention for those worlds until decades later, naming the main Marvel universe as Earth 616 in a Captain Britain story titled Rough Justice, which originally appeared in the Marvel UK book titled The Defenders, published in 1983. Although most people credit Alan Moore with the origination of the numbering system, used to differentiate our Captain Britain from the other numerous Captain Britons of other worlds seen in the story, artist Alan Davis says that it was the previous writer, Dave Thorpe, who actually chose the number. Depending on who you ask, the number was either chosen by Moore, basically at random, or was an alternate version of the number of the beast, chosen by Thorpe to comment on his feelings about modern superhero stories. Either way, the number was picked up by Chris Claremont as he continued Captain Britain's adventures in the Excalibur book published in the US, which is where it entered the consciousness of most Marvel readers. This also started the trend of using higher numbers for Marvel's various worlds. If you'd like some trivia, the Ultimate Universe is designated as 1610, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Earth 1999999. Going through a list of named Earths, the great majority of them are 4, 5, or even 6 digits long, with the highest number being 28,744,923,048,932. First mentioned in 2015's Avengers World number 21. Again, similar to DC, the designations given to most of these worlds are done in ancillary material, like the official handbooks of the Marvel Universe, rather than being referred to that way in story. When Earths are given a specific number in the story, it's almost always in the captions from an omniscient narrator, or named as such by one of the more powerful cosmic beings present, such as Uatu the Watcher, or Saturnine, the Omniverse Guardian that gave Captain Britain his powers and was the first to use the numbering system in the Rough Justice story mentioned earlier. So, to answer Joel's question about character knowledge regarding the world numbering system, very few in the Marvel multiverse are aware, with only the beings with cosmic levels of knowledge actually using that number system. A large part of this stems from the fact that two of the head creatives at Marvel aren't fans of using this numbering system. Both Tom Brevoort, Marvel's longest-serving editor ever, and Joe Quesada, Marvel's current creative director, have publicly stated their dislike for referring to the main universe as 616, as they feel it's too inside baseball. In other words, it relies too much on obscure knowledge that the average person won't know, and so can be used as sort of a gatekeeping bit of trivia. Personally, I'm fine with the term, but then I want everyone to know it, hence this episode and the show in general. One final bit of numbering trivia. In the 70s and 80s, Marvel and DC did some crossover titles where the characters lived on the same world, including 2 Superman and Spider-Man books, Incredible Hulk vs. Batman, and Teen Titans vs. X-Men. Both companies have given that universe its own separate designation. According to Marvel, it is Earth 7642, whereas DC simply calls it Earth Crossover. So, that should cover Joel's question. As usual, I'd love to get questions from others out there. Let me know where the gaps in your geeky knowledge are, and I'll happily fill them in. Or just let me know what you think of the show in general. You can send any and all of that via email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome2, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown or Twitter @geektownpodcast. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, come join the Patreon at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, which there are going to be a lot of this episode, and a monthly shout-out. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Lovitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips are the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.